Spanish. Jeremy, if you don't know about Jeremy, Jeremy has done a great job in providing leadership in a lot of different facets. He has an organization called Generation Alive. Tell us a little bit about Generation Alive before you begin. Tell us a little bit about Generation Alive and what it's about.
Well, Generation Alive is an organization I started in 2005. Initially, I wanted to get in and train young leaders. And it's involved into actually taking young people and getting them to understand poverty, understand the world of poverty, understand how they can help alleviate the pain of that poverty. And so that's what we do with a lot of young people and college kids. And we do different things, whether it be hunger initiatives or well digging. We do stuff with some orphanages. We also fight human trafficking. So we kind of bring awareness to what's going on in poverty areas, both in the United States and abroad, and we try to figure out ways that we can help nip some of that stuff in the bud.
Good.
Yeah.
And Jeremy, does Generation Alive then tie in with Not for Sale as well?
Some of the stuff with Not for Sale, I'm an ambassador for Not for Sale, which is just down the road. We do, obviously they do a lot of abolitionist stuff, and when I started doing hunger initiatives and I started looking into different areas of poverty, I was always seeing like these kids are being trafficked into the sex trade or the labor trade, and these girls and then some of the adult males as well, and I just didn't understand how that's even possible, that you can do that to a human life, let alone I was a little naive, obviously. I thought it'd end with the Civil War because, I thought slavery only existed here in the United States. But, so now that I see it's happening a lot and it's going on a lot, I just asked that I would be able to go and be able to take what I learned from Not for Sale and be able to go into the schools, into different areas and develop programs to help, allow kids to understand that it does take place to their peers, and we need to stop it and be aware of it and stand up against it.
So Jeremy, I know these guys would love to hear what's on your heart today and what God's been doing in your life.
Yeah, well, I stand up for this stuff. I can't sit down. My back's killing me. My neck hurts from yesterday's homer. So I gotta stand up and stay stretched a little bit. Yeah, it was a pop-up, but wind blew it out. Right? Well, one of the things I really enjoy is I tend to go last mainly because I like to hear some of these guys in their journey. I hang out with Bogey and Ish and Casilla. Casilla, I mean, we're like buddies in the bullpen. He tries teaching me Spanish and I'm trying to teach him English. I don't know if either of us are getting very far, but I think he's better at English than I am at Spanish. But we hang out quite a bit, and so I kind of know their journeys a little bit. But just to hear their heart, man, and to hear the way that Jesus is touching their lives, on a daily basis in their journey as a human being is pretty awesome. And what I've heard, a couple times, tonight with Ish and Vogie especially, is their ability to come back around. They started maybe with the Giants, they left, they came back, and God kind of redeemed some of their story in baseball. And one of the things I got to do this year, I got traded from Kansas City in 2006. They got tired of seeing my act out there on the mound when I definitely was not very good with them. And so they traded me to Colorado, and I got to go back this year, and this last time in Kansas City was the first time that I've ever been back to Kansas City in like 9 years since I've been traded from them, or 8 years. And so it was a time for me to see the stadium again, to be refreshed with some friendly faces. I saw the GM that traded me and shook his hand and told him thank you because I have 2 rings. I appreciate it. So that was pretty awesome for me, and just my wife joined me on that trip, and I remember sitting with her, and I remember sitting there just reminiscing of my time, and I had a lot of pain in Kansas City. I had a lot of frustration, I had a lot of downs, I had a lot of God, I doubt you, I don't understand why I'm playing this game. I had a lot of not so much trust, not so much I can do all things through Christ, I can't do anything with or without you, obviously, on the mound. It didn't seem like for me. And so when I got traded, I was at a really dark part of my life. I didn't understand why I was here. I didn't get the whole purpose of walking out onto a field and pitching a ball and giving up a homer one night or getting a win the next, and then you get cheered, you get booed, you go home and you come back, you do the same thing, and I don't really understand why I'm doing it, because just to entertain is, though fun for me, it seems shallow if that's the only reason why I'm here. And so for me, I needed something more. And I remember just in my grieving time, when I got traded to Colorado, I was just angry, I was frustrated, I wanted to quit, I wanted to go home, I didn't want any part of baseball, I didn't like it, I didn't understand it. And I remember I was starting to read Matthew 25. And it talked about the sheep and the goats and how Jesus separated them. And he talked about them. He said, this is how I'm going to know you're my disciples, is that when there's someone hungry, you feed them. And when there's someone thirsty, you give them something to drink. And he goes, because then you do it to me. And when you and to know that there is actually, when I just go up to a random person and I just love on them, knowing that I'm actually loving on Jesus, I kind of got excited, and I'm like, man, this is awesome, and I don't get to do that. I got to go on a field and there's got walls protecting us from fans, and I get in my car and I go home, and I don't feel like I'm around Jesus. You know, our clubhouse can be at times a dark place. You know, spirituality in the clubhouse isn't exactly always the easiest thing. And so sometimes I don't necessarily feel Jesus or see Jesus. And at that time, I didn't feel or see him. And I was like, this is such a shallow life for me. I want to do something that means something for the kingdom of God. And so I was reading Matthew 25, and I was getting excited, and I was like, man, now I really want to quit baseball. So I was trying to contemplate on how I was going to go to the GM that just traded for me and tell him I quit. And I don't think he had a give back plan. So I think he lost the guys. So I was kind of sitting there, and I walked out of my hotel. This is no joke. I walked out of my hotel and I started walking to Starbucks. Big Starbucks fan. And so I kind of walked out, and then I was kind of going to have my morning coffee, and I looked down, and there's a girl there. She's about 16. And she's sitting on the ground, and she's curled up, and she's eating a cup of noodles, and she's eating them really fast. And she's a homeless kid. They have a lot of homeless teenagers in Denver. And so she was sitting there, and she had a black eye, she had ripped clothes, she had a bloody lip, and she was just sitting there eating and not looking at anybody or anyone, and people were just walking by her. And I stopped in front of her, and I kind of touched her, and she jumped away. She's really scared. Obviously, her evening the night before probably didn't go as planned, as her life didn't seem to be going as planned, obviously, from her situation. And I said, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to know if you want something to eat. And she looked at me, and she said, that would be great. So I walked into Starbucks, and I go in. I said, hey, I need whatever has the most sugar possible. Give me the muffin. What is it? She goes, well, this has a lot of sugar. And I was like, all right, so grab that. And I saw this little green sludgy drink thing, and it was like some superfood deal that looks disgusting. She goes, this is pretty good. And I'm like, does it have a lot of sugar? She's like, well, it's got some of that and some nutrients. And I'm like, all right, I'll take it. And I walked out. And I walked up to her, and she looked at me, and she ate this thing as fast as she could. And I remember she looked at me, and she had tears in her eyes. She said, thank you. And I said, oh, you're welcome. And I walked off. And my only regret that day was that I didn't ask her story. But one of the things that I did feel was so much joy, and I didn't understand why. How do I get joy by giving some food to somebody that I don't know? Going to a baseball field that I don't want to be at, but I'm sitting at the field with a smile on my face with complete pleasure. And I asked God, I said, God, I don't understand. And he says, Jeremy, you fed me. That is purpose. That's why you're on this earth. You're here to reflect me. You're here to see me in every single person, because whether they live for me or not, they were created in my image, and they are part of me. And I think at times as a believer, we go through this world, and sometimes we get into the churchy crowds, and we surround ourselves with church people, and we say, well, unless you're saved, I'm not hanging with you because I don't want to be like you. And we reject them, and we judge them, and we look down on them because they're not like us. and we try to guilt them, or we try to look at them and say, I'm better than you because you live this terrible life and I've got Jesus, and we have this judgmental, critical attitude, and we wonder why non-Christians don't like hanging out with us. When the sinners loved Jesus, he loved them because he fed them when they were hungry. He wasn't always on his soapbox saying, if you don't accept Christ, you're going to rot in hell. He wasn't up there saying, you either learn to accept me or you're going to rot into this evil, evil place. There is some truth to that, but that is not what he said to people. He said, they're hungry, feed them. He sat at a well for a woman who had 5 husbands and living with the one that wasn't even hers, just to talk to her and tell her, I want to give you something to drink. I don't want to talk necessarily about your mistakes and your failures. I want to share with you what grace is all about. And I want to let you know that I love you. And the shame that you live in, I will free you from it. And when I handed that food to that young lady, her shame was so huge, man. People didn't even know she existed. As so many times we do it. I've done it. I've walked by the street and I see the dirty old man on the corner and I don't want to touch him or say hi to him or ask him his story. I want to go on the other side of the street because it's more comfortable. But that person is Jesus. And I don't want to skip out on that. I don't want people to live in their shame, because I believe in a Jesus that hung on a cross and he said, I've come to free you of your shame. I know you've messed up. I have not just come to let you have eternal life. I've come to free you from your shame. The bondage that you live in, the guilt that you have, the reasons that you don't think you're good enough, I have come to free you from that. The reason we don't judge lest you be judged is because you cannot do anything, I can't do anything that's ever going to be better than somebody else, because I've got my own issues. And my God, the reason I feel so good about myself is because he's freed me from the shame that I can be in if I live in the guilt of sin. And I don't have to live by that anymore, because I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I can walk in that purpose. And I can walk in that understanding that because of Jesus, I don't have to live in that sin. I don't have to be ashamed of that sin. I don't have to be guilty of that sin, and then I can free myself from it. That's the purpose of the cross. That was the whole purpose. Jesus said, I want to free you from your sin. And this is when you join my family. You join a family that is free of sin, that has full of grace and mercy. And this is what I want you to be a part of. And sometimes I feel I don't feel like that's achievable. And I see so much pain in the world, and I want to help out. And I wonder why, and I look around and I say, man, what is my purpose here? If it's not baseball, what? And God says, your platform is baseball. Your purpose is what my tattoo says on my forearm, that you shall not live for yourself, but you live for other people. And you make sure the people know that I love them. This selfish world where I stand on a mound and everybody looks at me, boos me or cheers me, close up on my face, throw a strike. They say all these things. It can feel like you're singled out. But I have freedom knowing now that I am not on that mound for me. I do not live for me. This is my journey. This is our journey. This is our platform. You all have a platform. You all have a part of this life, this human life, where you can reflect Jesus. You all can go out and love your neighbor as yourself. Because that's what Jesus died to empower you to do. Because without Jesus, I'm selfish. Without Jesus, I don't care about the homeless guy. Without Jesus, I don't care about the little girl that's put in slavery. Because all I can do is look at him and say, too bad for you, I'm glad I'm not you. Without Jesus, I don't have the ability to look at someone who needs water and wants to give them water. All I care is about giving myself water. But with Jesus, I want to clothe those who are naked. I want to feed those who are hungry. I want to give water to those who are thirsty. I want to go to the homeless man or woman and say, can I help you? Because I get out of my selfishness and I realize that there's so much shame that's on these people. And I want to free them from it simply by loving them. Because the Bible says that they will know that you are my disciple when you love one another. That's it. That's the simple truth. I don't have to stand on a soapbox with a blowhorn and say, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, and follow that up with, if you don't accept it, you're going to rot in hell. If I'm somebody walking on the street, I'm saying, I thought for God so loved the world. And Jesus said to the woman when he pulled her out of prostitution, when all the Pharisees were looking around this woman who he was brought before him saying this woman was caught in adultery. She was caught doing a sexual act. And he said, where are your accusers? When he wrote in the sand, they left, and he looked at this lady and says, where are your accusers? And she says, they're not longer here. And she says, neither do I accuse or condemn you. You know what you're doing is wrong. You need to stop. But I want to tell you that I love you. I simply love you. He simply loves us. He simply takes us on our journey. We go through ups and downs, but if we can learn to just simply trust, we will feel the love of God. And we will be free of our shame. And we'll be free of our doubts. And we'll be free of our judgments. And we will live free to love our neighbor as ourselves, because that is simply the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's what these guys do to their families. That's what these guys do when they represent Jesus when we go to other cities. This is what I believe everybody here is and can be if they accept Jesus. People that love their neighbor. We don't condemn our neighbor. And that's what my God did when he sent his son Jesus to die on the cross for my sins. He freed me from my selfishness, and he allowed me to be selfless. And he allowed me to feel a love that's unconditional so that I can show other people unconditional love. This is my God and this is my Jesus. This is who we worship. This is who we sing about. This is who you're hearing about. And this is who we want you to know about. This is Jesus.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, each one of you, for being here today. I know we're gonna invite Natalie Grant and her band back on the stage, but I just want to thank these guys. It's a lot harder to share the intimacy of their lives than it is to perform on